What forgotten thing in the attic revealed something deep? I never believed an attic could hide something that would completely change the way you see your own family. Most people expect old toys, dusty boxes, maybe a forgotten piece of clothing, but not something that forces you to question the past you thought you understood. Something that makes you feel like the life you thought you knew was only half real. Mine started with a single wooden box wedged behind a broken trunk. I wasn't supposed to be in the attic that night. I had only climbed up to check for a leak after a storm had shaken the neighborhood. The wind rattled the old windows, and I remember thinking the house itself sounded tired. It groaned and whispered in the way old houses do when they are trying to stay alive. I stepped carefully over boxes, my flashlight slicing through the darkness, when something caught my eye, a narrow shape sticking out behind a stack of blankets. Someone had clearly pushed it there, hoping no one would ever notice. The box was heavier than it looked. When I lifted it, something inside shifted with a dull, metallic clink. The lid was held shut by two rusted latches. I brushed off the dust and hesitated before opening it, a sense of unease crawling over my skin. At first, it seemed harmless. Inside were a few yellowed letters, a small pocket watch, and a set of keys tied together with fraying string. They looked like someone's life carefully collected and then abandoned. I almost closed the box again, thinking I'd leave it for another day, until something tucked beneath the lining caught my eye. A photograph, and not an old one. It was recent, maybe only a few years old. My father stood in front of a white house I had never seen. Beside him was a woman I didn't recognize. Neither of them was smiling. Their hands were close, almost touching. At the bottom, someone had written in neat, deliberate letters, "Not yet." A shiver ran through me. I didn't know the house, the woman, or why my father would hide a photo of them here. He wasn't secretive. He barely kept track of his own socks, let alone mysterious photographs hidden in the attic. I set the photo aside and opened the letters. The first one was brief, written in my father's handwriting. "If someone finds this, wait for me before you judge." Wait for me. My father had passed away 2 years earlier. Whatever he wanted to explain, he never did. The second letter was addressed to a name I had never heard. Lena. The handwriting was shaky, anxious, unfinished. He mentioned regret, a promise he had failed to keep, a door he never opened. I reread the lines again. Nothing made sense. Then I noticed the keys, 3 of them. One small, one medium, one long and heavy. Each looked like it belonged somewhere far apart. I didn't recognize any. My father had never mentioned extra properties, storage units, or secret rooms. I slipped them into my pocket and drove straight to my aunt's house. I needed answers. She grew pale immediately when I showed her the photo. "That's Mara," she said, barely above a whisper. "Your father knew her long before he met your mother. He disappeared for months when they argued, but he never spoke of her again." I showed her the letters. Her hands shook slightly. "He planned something before he married your mother, something he never forgave himself for." I asked if she knew what it was. She shook her head. "He kept the truth somewhere only he could reach," she said, her voice dropping almost to a whisper. I drove home in silence. The house felt different now, the shadows heavier, as if the attic had already cast its weight across the walls. I stared at the keys. One of them must open something connected to the woman, the letters, and the strange message. Not yet. For weeks I searched. Old lockers, abandoned sheds, even a small rental my father had once owned in the outskirts of town. Nothing. The keys never seemed to fit anywhere I tried. I began to think I'd imagined it all. The photo, the letters, the heavy sense of anticipation, but the memory of them clung to me. Then, one night, I examined the photograph again and noticed a small metal gate behind my father and the woman, and on that gate hung a lock. I retrieved the long key from my pocket. It fit perfectly. The house stood hidden behind trees on a narrow road outside town. When I opened the gate, I found a small yard with a single bench and a stone marker. A memorial. No date, only a name. Lena. It hit me slowly, like waves pulling back before they crash. My father hadn't been hiding an affair. He had been hiding a child, one who didn't survive, one he had planned to honor but never found the courage to speak about. The woman in the photograph was the mother. The message, "Not yet," suddenly made sense. He wasn't ready to tell me. Maybe he had hoped that someday I would find the truth for myself. I sat on the bench for hours, holding the old keys in my hand, thinking about the father I thought I knew, about the man who had lived with this secret so quietly that no one at all, had any idea. Some forgotten things in an attic are meant to stay buried. Others wait patiently for the right person to open them. I still keep the box in my home, not because I enjoy the mystery, but because it holds a piece of the man I never really knew.